Hello, it's Adedoyin Jaiyesimi here, and welcome to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've recorded content for YouTube, and I'm really sorry. A lot has been happening over the last few months, starting the Comms Mentorship Circle, planning the Comms Mentorship Conference, releasing my latest book, A's for Audacity, going on a book tour. And so every time that I thought about recording, I was like, where is the time? And I'm also doing a research that's focused on expanding access for young African professionals, so access to training and global certification opportunities. So a lot has been happening, but I'd like to say thank you to my loyal followers and subscribers. You keep coming to the page, watching old videos, learning. I'm so grateful that you still find this channel relevant, and we're back. We're back to teaching, sharing content, everything that you will need just to, again, support you in your journey in communication. So I'm going to get right into the topic for today, but I just thought to leave this message to say Adedoyin is back, and please follow me on this journey. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's focus on the topic of today. And I saw this probably like 2 months ago, the refreshed, or should we say updated, Barcelona Principles. Now, if you're like, are you doing, what is this about? Barcelona Principles. I've never heard of it. I'm here for you. I'm here to break it down. I'm here to explain it. But this is very, very useful, especially with regards to communication measurement. And it's really important that you know about these principles. You start thinking about how to incorporate and add it to the work that you do, so that you can demonstrate the value of the things that you're doing within your organizations and the communication strategies that you are implementing. But before I go into that, if you are in Accra, Ghana, I would like to especially invite you for the Accra edition of the Mentorship Circle and A's for Audacity book tour. So we had the Comms Mentorship Conference in July, which was in Lagos and was streamed live, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the idea is to take this experience into different cities as God gives me grace, capacity, and most importantly, the funding to do it. We've done the first leg in Ibadan, which is in Nigeria. Accra, Ghana is the second leg. The third location, I'll leave you guessing, but yeah, I hope to be able to take this to as many cities as possible. If you'd like to attend, please register using bit.ly/CMC tour, and it's happening on Saturday, 13th September, precisely in Osu, Accra. So if you're in Accra, or you know any professional that is in Accra, please tell them they should not miss this. Okay, so let's get into the topic of today, which is on the Barcelona Principles. Now, I would like to start off by explaining or telling you about what the Barcelona Principles are. And I'm going to put a link in the description for this video. I'll put a link to the Barcelona Principles, the updated one, and the video. So there was a webinar where they discussed these updated principles, so you can watch everything. I'm all about having information, having knowledge, because when you know, you're able to decide, or you're able to have access to things that will empower you to deliver better results. So please visit the link, look through the principles, see how it applies to your work, and see what you can currently implement and incorporate. The Barcelona Principles are a set of 7 principles. They provide an overarching framework for effective PR and communication management. And you would agree that that's something that a lot of communications professionals and PR professionals still struggle with. Like, every time I have to go and train a communications team, every time I have to engage with a PR professional, we're still on this conversation on how do we measure. Some do not even understand why they're measuring, or they're just about, X number of people came, we got this number of impressions. And I'm like, okay, how did this tie into the overarching business result? What were the overarching business outcomes that the organization wanted to see? And how did your impressions, the number of people that attended, or whatever metrics that you're measuring, tie into those overarching business outcomes? Ladies and gentlemen, we can't just give all these metrics that don't tie into organizational goals and objectives. And so these Barcelona Principles helps you to really, really think strategically about measurement, about implementing tactics that move the needle and actually make a difference. And these principles, they offer best practice guidance on how to measure and evaluate PR and comms, so that you can work in a meaningful, transparent. I like this outcome driven manner. We need to be more outcome driven, too tactically focused. I'm glad that, those of you that you've been following my page and my content for such a long time, I've seen a number of you become more strategic in your thinking and approach, and I applaud you. I'm proud of you, but there is more, because when we do our own part well, it is easier for us to advocate for the things that we need. It's easier for us to show proof that comms and PR is absolutely valuable to the existence and the continued sustenance of any organization. And these Barcelona principles, they're useful for that communication measurement on different levels. Okay, so they had the principles that they set up in 2010. Why was it updated? From what I read, and a lot of the things that you're going to see in the slides are things that I just picked from the manual, which I would hyperlink in the description of this video, but I just brought out a few things that jumped at me as I was reading it. And one of the reasons why these principles were updated is to provide more clarity and practicality, which I totally like, because you don't want to have principles that people are like, okay, what's this about? How does this apply to me? How is this relevant? So they really broke it down so that it's more relevant to daily application, which is quite nice. And then modernized relevance, because we know society continually evolves, the industry is evolving, communications is evolving, technology is evolving. So what they've done is to make sure that it reflects this landscape that is continually evolving. I took this quote directly from the manual, and they said, communication must demonstrate its impact and value to the organization. See, this is not Adedoyin that wrote it. By showing how it's delivered against the objectives. That's the benchmark, guys. What does this organization want to achieve, and how did we as the comms team contribute to the achievement of that objective? If you cannot answer the question, you've not done your work. And then it goes on to say, when you ensure that measurement and evaluation applies the Barcelona principles, that's how you would achieve that ability to show that the work that you're doing delivers against the organization's objectives. So here is an overview of the principles. Like I said before, 7 sets of principles, and I'm going to go principle by principle so that we can really look at what exactly is this all about. Now, if you've not seen this framework here before, please, should I add another please? Please make sure you sit down and learn it. It's something that we teach in our Comms Intensive Africa Strategic Communications course. It is a framework that was created by AMEC, which is all about PR and communications measurement. And it really gives a visual representation of what it means to work strategically as a communications professional that is positioned to deliver organizational objectives. And so you can see that right at the center of this framework is the organization. It always has to be the organization. It cannot be you. It cannot be your desires. It has to be the organization. And so you begin to work through the things that you need to do. So you start with aligning your objective. The goal was not to teach on this, but I really have to do a refresher. For those of you that you've known about it before, this is a refresher. If you've never heard about it, it's just a quick summary. You really need to know exactly what is at stake when we say that we're handling communications for an organization or a brand, whether it's for profit, non-for-profit, or it's governmental. And you have to align your objectives. So there needs to be a sync between your organizational objectives and your communication objectives. We spend time teaching this in our strategic communications course, because a lot of times this is where we miss it, right? And then you have to now move on. That's why you now plan, you set your targets and all the other inputs. What do I need? I want to create content. Are we doing an event? What are the inputs that we need? And so you look at your target audience, your stakeholder mapping. You will need to do a comprehensive stakeholder mapping and not make assumptions. Develop your strategy. What exactly are we trying to do here, and how are we going to achieve it? Then you go into developing your tactics, which is the implementation stage. And I've said it so many times, we're too quick to run into tactics. We've not thought about our objectives. We've not thought about the alignment, our stakeholders. What exactly is the overarching strategy? And then you measure. Okay, we're doing this. How is this relevant? How can I say that this is delivering the outcomes and the things that I needed to deliver? And then you measure here, audience response and effects. Again, I don't have time to, the goal of this was to talk about the Barcelona principles, to really break it down for you. So you can see at this beginning here, that early stage is the preparation. Here is the implementation, and then your measurement. You're measuring, okay, so we did this event, how many people came? What happened as a result of that event? What was the impact on our organization stakeholders? So this is very, very critical. So this diagram, what this diagram is doing is to highlight where each of the Barcelona principles apply in this framework. So Barcelona principle 1, for example, is at this aligning objective stage. 2 and 3 is at this planning stage. So again, it just helps you to know where it fits in, which goes to the previous point about how they wanted to make sure that this is really applicable for every professional. So let's deep dive into each of the principles. Now, Barcelona Principle 1, setting clear, measurable objectives is a critical, I really love the language of this principle. It's a critical prerequisite for effective communication planning, measurement, and evaluation. You cannot have a strong, effective communication plan or strategy without having clear and measurable objectives. And so the manual goes down further. So they don't just give you the principle, they kind of explain it. And this is, again, from the manual. These are not even Adedoyin's words. I'm just highlighting the things that jumped at me so that you can go and read it for yourself and pick the ones that jump at you as well. It says that objectives that are well defined help to demonstrate the role of communication in driving tangible impact beyond just media presence. It's not just press releases, it's not just media relations or press mentions. There is more that communication can do. But if you're not setting the right objective, how will you be able to articulate that tangible impact? Yes, a lot of things that we do is intangible, but we need to actually have our minds on seeing the tangible impact come out of those intangibles. So your objectives should be smarter. And this one, I thought, wow, this is very nice because I know the SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. But here they added evaluated and reviewed, because you have to, in the life cycle of whatever plan, strategy that you are implementing, you have to evaluate, you have to review what's working, what's not working. Are we meeting the mark? Did we not meet the mark? And then when we're done, we have to look and say, okay, where did we drop the ball? Where did we make the mistake? What were the lessons learned? And document all of those things. And it says, don't set objectives that are only focused on output and vanity metrics. So we sent out X number of articles, we posted this, we did that. Those are outputs. What happened next? Don't set objectives that are vague and can't be supported by clear data. So again, I have a video on setting measurable objectives. You really need to know how to set objectives that will make it easy for you to measure. Barcelona Principle 2. Defining and understanding all stakeholder audiences are essential steps to plan, build relationships, and create lasting impact. So for the purpose of these principles, they created this term called stakeholder audiences, because sometimes people take stakeholder and audiences, you use them interchangeably, but sometimes they can actually be separate. You can have your stakeholders, you can have your audiences, but for the purpose of this, they've kind of merged it into this phrase, stakeholder audiences. But the essential point is you need to know what are your audience groups, the stakeholder groups that are relevant to your communication, to the business, what is likely to resonate with them. You have to do your research. Those of you that have engaged with me for a long time, you know that I keep saying, don't make assumptions. Assumptions will make whatever it is that you're doing dead on arrival. You need to speak to your target audience. You need to do some analysis. You need to get feedback from them and then tailor whatever it is you have to what will resonate and engage them the most, to boost, you can see it here, boost chances of better outcomes and impact. When you make assumptions, there will be gaps. I've seen it so many times. I've personally made assumptions in the past of my stakeholder, of my target audience, and it didn't really end well. So I'm very much on that side of, even if, sometimes you have a hunch, you kind of know that actually this will resonate or this should be, but still get some data to back up that hunt. Very, very important. And then you're looking at the broader landscape and the environment in which your stakeholder operates. What exactly is happening socially, politically, in the sector of economy, for example. You have to bear that in mind. You're launching a new product that is a premium product, maybe aimed at the middle class, but the middle class in your country is currently shrinking. And so they're having to make certain high-level decisions about their disposable income. Surely you have to factor that into your communication. It's something that you need to even take it back to the management if they haven't really thought about it. Is this a good time for us to be launching this? Is there a political unrest? Is there some sensitivities around what we want to do within this period? Those are the things that you need to do that really demonstrate that you're thinking strategically, and also helps you to get better results or the best results from the work that you're doing. Seek to understand how stakeholder groups can influence each other. The big example that I give is one I gave recently. You want to target women, but you forget that they have husbands. You forget that they have fathers or family who are secondary influencers in that decision-making process. Maybe a woman in a rural community, because obviously we know and we expect that women should have agency, but the reality is that in certain communities, in certain areas, women do not necessarily have the agency that we would like them to have. And so a lot of that decision making is done by the men or those who are in different positions around them. You have to take into consideration those people, because while you are speaking to the woman and she may agree and accept and be like, oh yes, I'm on board, by the time she gets back home, if she doesn't have the buy-in of her critical stakeholders, then she's not going to do it. So you have to really think about that. Barcelona Principle 3. Comprehensive communication measurement and evaluation should be applied to all relevant channels used to understand and influence audience stakeholders. So what it means is you need to measure your social media platforms, measure your owned media, make sure you account for all the channels. You're putting stuff, podcast, what exactly is this bringing back? You're using an influencer marketing campaign or influencer marketing tactic. Okay, so this influencer engagement, how do we know that it's working? You really, really have to make sure you're measuring across the board. Again, you can see these people, they have something against vanity metrics. I tend not to call them vanity metrics because they are actually needed. There are some things you cannot establish if people are not aware. For example, if people are not engaging, if they're not liking, if they're not attending your events, if they're not seeing it in the news, it doesn't lead to the eventual outcome. I think the issue for me is when people stop at those things. So I don't really think they're vanity metrics, likes and impressions. They are needed. They are a part of the process. It's like you want to make jollof rice and you say that boiling the rice is vanity. How you get jollof rice? But anyway, that's an aside. Okay, so it says gain a better understanding of the stakeholder ecosystem, focus on measurement on creating awareness, shifting attitudes and perception, influencing behaviors and other outcome-oriented metrics. So can you see that this is not just about, oh, they liked, they saw it. It's what did they do with the information that we passed across. So we put this thing on Instagram, X number of people liked it. After they liked it, did they click our link to go to our website? Did they subscribe? Did they download? What was the action? How many of them, after liking, after engaging, took our call to action? How did this change perception? If we did a misinformation campaign, for example, we wanted to change information about something, did this really change people's attitude and perception? That is the critical thing. So you can't say, oh, 10,000 people, 1 million people saw this, engaged with it, yet we still have the perception problem. So we just spent money, you got all of those engagements, but it didn't change anything with regards to the outcome. So you really want to be thinking about outcome-oriented metrics. Now, if you're like, Adedoyin, man, there's a lot I need to know, please go and get some learning. You can either sign up for the Comms Avenues Strategic Communications course, which is happening this October. Shola Abulu and Associates, they also have their own one-day strategic communication course, and they have different variety of courses as well. Sign up for any of those things. Sign up on other, it doesn't even have to be either of those two, but please gain this knowledge because it really does make a difference, I assure you. Barcelona Principle 4, effective measurement and evaluation of communications requires qualitative and quantitative analysis. So it's not just about the numbers, right? Numbers alone don't explain why something worked, resonated, or failed. Sometimes there is context. Sometimes you put something out. And this is why even my team, when they say, oh, engagement has risen this week, or we saw an increase in X this week, I always try to tell them, do we know why this happened? What was the reason? We have to be able to probe further. Yes, I'm happy that we got more engagement, more views, more comments, more subscriptions, but why? So that we can take on board those lessons learned and see, is it a one-off thing, or is it something that we can replicate? That thing is very, very important. So for example, you're managing a brand and you're trying to like get people maybe to like or to follow, increase your follower count, and then you do a giveaway, and part of the thing that you put in the giveaway is people should follow. Of course your follower count is going to increase now, so you really have to think beyond just the numbers. And I like how they put it here: quantitative data, the numbers, totals, percentages from our content evaluation and other communication research can show the scale and reach of the communication activities, while for the qualitative, it provides critical context behind the numbers. What are the motivations, perceptions, sentiments? Because with just the numbers, you don't know why. Why did people click? Why did people like? Why did they watch? Why did they engage? That's what qualitative data. And yes, it's harder to get qualitative data because you're thinking one-on-one engagement, you're thinking surveys, you're thinking opinion polls, but it is really good. And when you feed this information back into the communications planning process, it gives you a guide to smarter communication strategies and decisions. And that's the point I was making about, I always ask my team, why did this happen? If we know why, we can implement it or we can embed it into our decision-making process to optimize for future activities. And that's why that is critically important. Next, Barcelona Principle 5. I hope you are taking notes and I hope you're actually learning from this. It says invalid measures such as advertising value equivalent should not be used. Instead, measure and evaluate the contribution of communication by its outcome and impact. So AVEs, I can't even teach on AVEs today, but they're just used, when people estimate the value of, okay, so we put this story, or we had this feature in the newspaper. This newspaper has X amount of readership, and this, because they have X amount of readership, you then put a figure. I won't say it's complex, but it's just a very bogus thing, right? To just say, oh, this publication or this feature was worth X million or reached, and it's not founded on concrete data or realistic data that really shows you the true value. So what this principle 5 is saying is, do not use invalid measure. So you have to ask yourself, this thing that I'm measuring, is it valid? Is it endorsed by the industry? Does it help me to make informed decisions? And does it assist in evaluating, improving, and learning? Now, Barcelona Principle 6. Measurement and evaluation should report outputs, outcomes, and impact related to the organization and stakeholders. So you see some of these terms coming up. So your output, your outcomes, your impact, right? Not just outputs. Some of us, we just focus on outputs. We can't really talk about our outcomes and impacts, and that should change. It says evaluating output, outcome, and impact ensures that your activity is strategically aligned with the organization goals and demonstrates a clear contribution to change. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what makes the difference. How is communication contributing to change? How is communication contributing to the achievement of organizational goals and objectives? If you cannot answer that question, you really have to go back to the drawing board, because they are not going to see the value. They absolutely are not going to see the value. And that's why for something like sales, it's very, very obvious. When things are moving, when there's volume, the products are moving from the shelves, they can see the direct correlation in terms of the cash flow, in terms of the profit, in terms of just bottom line. We must be able to articulate what our own contribution to the organization is. And I really like this second point: work with relevant departments to ensure alignment across the organizational goals, focusing on what matters for the organization and integrating data where appropriate. Please, it's so important. We sit down in our office, we create great strategies, great ideas we want to implement, but you're not speaking to people in other departments. You're not making sure that this thing will actually, you will get buy-in, there is alignment. No, you have to speak to other people. Currently, I'm in the middle of a project and I'm speaking to people in different teams, from finance, HR, transformation, people. It's so interesting. And from every conversation, after every conversation, like, oh, we need to change that. Oh, there's something we didn't bear in mind just because of what they have said. So you have to engage people in the other departments, because again, that's how you also establish value. That's how you also help them to see that, hey guys, finance, You actually need communication. This is how communication can help you to achieve this thing, but you will never know if you don't engage with them. It says don't treat outputs and outcomes as the same. Now, if you don't know the difference between output and outcome, I'll suggest you watch my previous video on measurement, and I'll put the link in the description, because you have to know the difference. What are outputs and what are outcomes, and what exactly is the impact? So they give an example here: media clip volumes. Okay, we sent out this press release, or we did this event. It was featured in CNN, featured in BBC, featured in Ghana Post, featured whatever newspaper or media platform. So media clip volumes and tonality of coverage do not equate to the effect on stakeholder audience. So while you can tell me that, oh, you got 100 media mentions, what difference did that make? Did it change the perception of the stakeholders? Did it make them to change their attitude about our brand or organization? What exactly did those 100 media mentions achieve? And that's the difference between output and outcome in a very, very simple way, I hope. And finally, Barcelona Principles 7. Ethics, governance, and transparency with data, methodologies, and technology builds trust and drives learning. You know that at the center of the work that we do is trust for any organization, because where trust is damaged, where trust is breached, that threatens the social license to operate for any organization. And so you have to make sure that in everything that you do as a communications professional that is managing the reputation of an organization, what are the ethical practices with regards to how you collect your data, your methodologies, and your use of technology, because these things are pressing, like they are hot issues right now, right? So you want to make sure that your capture and use of data and content follows the legal requirements and regional restrictions to which they apply. So whatever country you're in, what are the rules regarding data privacy, data protection, all of those things. And so you have to really think about those protection laws, compliance, copyrights, very, very important. So that's essentially what the Barcelona Principles are all about. I hope this has been educative for you in some way, but I think the biggest takeaway that I want you to take out of this is it is time to step up our game in terms of how we show and demonstrate the impact of the work that we do. I have no doubts that a majority, because there's some people that they're playing, but a majority, I don't have the numbers, but I'd like to believe that a majority are really doing hard, sincere work, want to actually make a difference. And so how do you then make sure that you're looking at the right things, you're measuring the right things, you're showing the impact in the right way? Because those are the things you will use to advocate for the things that you need, whether it's human resources, whether it's financial resources. And my ultimate dream is that we see a time where organizations, senior leaders begin to really understand that critical role that communication plays. But before we do that advocacy on the organizational level, we have to look inwards. We have to do the work. We have to make sure that we are delivering the right results, and we're showing, like, it's very clear. Like when finance, they come with their spreadsheets and they're showing, we need to be able to come with our own results, backed with receipts, backed with the proof, to show that, hey, here's what communications achieved for you this year. So I hope that you found that very useful. Just as a reminder, I'm in Accra this week for the Mentorship Circle, and A is for Audacity Book Tour. That's the Accra edition, which is taking place on Saturday, 13th September. If you're in Accra, Ghana, I would really, really love to see you there. Please sign up using bit.ly/CMC Book Tour. Invite your friends. So even if you don't live in Accra, invite your friends, share the flyer, go on my page on LinkedIn or Comms Mentorship Circle page. Just help us repost the flyer so that as many people as possible can come and see it as well. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you have any question for me, you can send an email to adedoyin@thecommsavenue.com, and I'll be very, very happy to answer. You can also follow me on LinkedIn and Instagram as well, so that we can stay connected. Bye.